Australian Bitcoin podcast, presented by HardBlock, Australia's first Bitcoin-only exchange.
Hello and welcome to the Australian Bitcoin podcast. Happy New Year. It's 2025. And with me is Alex, the product manager at HardBlock. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dan. Happy New Year. We're
Yeah,
back
thank
at
you.
it, like we promised.
Yeah. Did you have a good, did you had a bit of a Christmas break? Did you do anything interesting? Had a good time?
Yeah, I had a great time. I was away for, I don't know, almost 2 weeks. I got my hang gliding in, which is good. Going hang gliding on New Year's Day. Had an awesome time.
Okay.
Though I drove up the coast and the hang glider was pretty much just a hood ornament for about 2 weeks. And then
Okay.
I came home and I went hang gliding the next day. But it's what it is. Yeah, it's good fun.
Okay. Yeah. I went a bit of fishing, like with my family. We went to York Peninsula, which is an area just outside of Adelaide.
Nice,
It was very
nice.
good. Got like my brother-in-law had a little boat, so we caught some fish, caught some crabs and some fish. It was very productive, very good.
Oh, actually, I went fishing. I caught a
you?
stick. Yeah, I caught a
stick?
stick. Yeah, it was pretty good.
What's a stick? I haven't
but
heard of them. I'm not sure if we have them.
oh, you've got them. Trust me, you've got them. They go on
you
every
mean like a
tree.
stick? Oh, a
yeah,
stick.
yeah,
Okay, sorry.
yeah.
Is that some kind of fish?
Yeah, it's pretty
Okay,
good. It's a pretty exciting
slow
fishing
to that.
adventure. Yeah.
Slow to that.
Yeah, went and bought some hand reels. Did some casting, some lassoing with the hand reels. What did we catch? I caught a stick, and then also caught. We caught a tiny little fish which we threw away, and then a little stingray as well. So it was
Cool. So we got most
awesome.
stingray. We got some snook and some crabs.
Oh yeah,
It's
nice.
pretty good. Anyway, well, now I'm embarrassed myself, and this is recorded. Oh well, we'll leave it. We'll leave it
Yeah.
at home. People can laugh at me. I won't. We don't have to edit it out. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. So So for this episode, we'll do a recap of. We'll do a little recap of the year of 2024. Some of the major events, and we'll talk also some of the events that happened the past month. So maybe I'll just start off with a price summary for the year. So obviously it's been a pretty good year. Bitcoin went up. So we started the year at, hold on, I'm going to get my document. We started the year at 40,000 US dollars. And we finished it just around the $100,000 mark. $100,000 obviously being a huge milestone, which we just reached towards the end of December. It is really like $100,000. You feel like Bitcoin is kind of playing in the big leagues now. But anyway, yes. So we done that. So we actually beat our all-time high this year. Early on in the year, in March, we beat the all-time high from 2021, which was 65,000 US dollars, and we beat that in March. And following that, the Bitcoin price went down a little bit and was kind of steady for most of the year. Until it kind of reached that $100,000 mark towards the end of the year.
Weird. That chopsolidation. If you had that chopsolidation that checkmating likes to call it.
Yeah.
And then the election.
Yeah. So basically, that's pretty much a 100% increase throughout the year. So 100%, pretty good return. It's been a good year. It's been a good year for Bitcoin. It's been like a lot of epic things. Maybe I'll just summarize. It's been actually an epic year for Bitcoin. It hasn't been a good year. It's been an epic year in many ways. But I'll before we discuss, get into the discussions, I'll just quickly go through some of the milestones throughout the year, and then we can kind of discuss going into more discussions. But okay, so the year started off. The big event at the start of the year in January was the approval of the ETFs. Then later on in April was the halving, where the Bitcoin mining reward halved from 6.25 Bitcoin to 3.125 Bitcoin. And that kind of creates less selling pressure, and usually after the halving, the price kind of tends to increase. So there was the ETF approval, Bitcoin halving. The other big kind of development was towards the end of the year. Obviously, Trump and the Republican Party really endorsing Bitcoin and all that stuff. We've covered that many times. So that was kind of like the other major development. So I think these are kind of like very big milestones. Is there anything you missed? Like, what do you think of the year, Alex? What's your take?
Oh yeah, it was obviously a huge year. I think the biggest standout is obviously like that Bitcoin's become a major political issue. Like prior to this, it wasn't. Maybe people didn't predict it to happen quite this early, but the Trump campaign's picked it up and run with it. And yeah, now it's going to be a major issue in every country around the world. Especially with some of the rhetoric we're seeing at the moment, just prior to the Trump what do you call it? The Trump team taking over in the US. We're seeing all sorts of claims around use of military force to seize Greenland, and that Canada should become the 51st state of the US. All these sorts of things. I think that's going to push the degree to which crypto and Bitcoin was endorsed by the Trump campaign. It's really pushing it into mindshare, and like you see it in all the news articles in Australia. They're talking about crypto quite a lot at the moment, and Bitcoin.
Yeah. So kind of some of the what are kind of other obviously the political thing and like adoption, and like I felt if I was summarize this year, it really kind of started kind of entering the mainstream, like more. You could almost say it's mainstream Bitcoin, maybe not quite, but almost. It's starting to become mainstream. Like part of it was the ETFs, and the political. I think another big development was obviously like a big event through the year was MicroStrategy, like it continues its Bitcoin purchasing and like going up so much and having this very hardcore Bitcoin adoption strategy, and I think there's also an early
being included in the S&P 500.
And an early
getting
kind of
passive
trend,
inflows.
An early trend is like more Bitcoin, like more companies following MicroStrategy's lead and kind of adopting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So it's still early on, but some of the companies that bought Bitcoin throughout the year, like Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, Rambo had Bitcoin as a treasury asset already. This was a few years, 2 or 3 years ago, but Tesla obviously holds Bitcoin, and there were many other few companies. I just kind of list some of them that like started holding Bitcoin: LQR House, Remix Point, Genius Point, Cosmos Health, Jiva Technologies, and a few other ones. I mean, I haven't heard most of them, but there's been a few companies starting to hold Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and I think that might be like a growing trend for the next year, for 2025, because it does have that kind of it has become kind of more mainstream. So that's kind of one trend I see that happened.
Yeah. Well, it helps to be in a bull run for mainstreaming awareness.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Like, is there something else like you thought like interesting throughout the year? Or
I mean, yeah, I've got the Australian specific stuff. I think on the global side, the ETFs, MicroStrategy's rise, and probably obviously the biggest one is the Trump endorsement of Bitcoin and how significant the crypto/Bitcoin lobby was in funding his campaign and what that's likely to do. They're the biggest topics. I think on the Australian side, I think one that ties into that was the Elon Musk e-safety commissioner like spat that we had sort of running consistently throughout the year. I think, obviously Elon's going ham at the moment on Twitter, and he's kind of like the attack dog of the incoming Trump administration at the moment. So yeah, you have to think that Australia is just going to back down and keep a low profile. Like it seems like Elon's he's fighting on multiple fronts and winning at the moment. He's fighting against wokeness in Canada. He's fighting against Keir Starmer and the government in the UK. Australia seems to have just really kept its head down. I'd say we're probably one of the only countries that doesn't seem to be in like an ongoing dispute with the incoming Trump administration, which is, I guess that's good, but I think it's an indicator that stuff like e-safety and all those issues that have been firing off for the most of 2024, they might get put on the back burner. Especially after we had the legislation for, I forget, what was it called? Obviously, we got identification for under 16s. They passed that, but there was the other one which didn't get passed at the end, right at the very back end of last year when they were trying to pass that. One thing that I did think was really interesting was that I saw that Jim Chalmers, who's obviously the treasurer for the government, sorry, it took me a word, well, to remember the word. He has indicated that they're currently reviewing. I saw this just last week. They're urgently reviewing how significant Bitcoin and blockchain technologies are for the Australian economy. And I think that they're basically taking a lot of notice of how likely the strategic Bitcoin reserve is going to be.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Some years that happened actually recently in Australia, just a few weeks ago, was IMP, super fund, started investing in Bitcoin. So that was the first super fund in Australia to start investing into Bitcoin as an asset class. It only invested 27 million, which is 0.05% of their total funds under management. So 5% of 1%.
Still a start.
Yeah, but it's dipping their feet kind of in the water. We'll probably increase it. Getting off zero, that's the hardest thing, right? Once you get off zero. So anybody at home who's still on zero Bitcoin, get off zero.
Yeah. And Allianz as well. Allianz have bought Bitcoin. Allianz obviously is a reasonably big insurer in Australia. They're a multinational company, but they've bought Bitcoin as well. Interesting to see.
Yeah, so I think something like when I was saying the kind of more mainstream, becoming mainstream, more acceptable, and with the ETFs, because obviously IMP, again, it hasn't bought Bitcoin directly. It's not holding private keys. It's bought futures. So these kind of ETFs and future thing products, financial products, you kind of financialize it like Bitcoin with the ETFs, and you can have these kind of products where IMP wouldn't hold Bitcoin directly, but it can buy it now through these kind of financial products. Which is a good thing, but a bad thing, because when if you have part of the whole point of Bitcoin was to kind of get away from this financial product, because when you have these financial products and futures on top of Bitcoin, suddenly you can have all these very financial magic and trickery going on, and so it's good that they can buy it, but the kind of downside is it allows that kind of weird financial engineering, as they call it, and that's one of the benefits of holding Bitcoin directly. If you hold it directly, you don't get affected by whatever. And I'm sure nothing crazy is happening right now, but if Bitcoin does become kind of more accepted in 40, 50 years, when you have this kind of financial product, it kind of, you can start doing you start building layers on top of layers on top of Bitcoin with these financial products, and suddenly we start doing these kind of the financial engineering.
Yep. More Australian related things where we had Craig Wright, not Satoshi. That court judgment was handed down, and I think actually just recently he's been sentenced as well. But the main thing was that the court found that he is definitely not Satoshi, and that he'd entered in, that he was an unreliable witness, and that he'd basically fraudulently doctored submissions that he made to the court. So that was a good conclusion to that long saga, which has been tying up a lot of I guess, effort around a lot of the Bitcoin core developers, and also like exposing them to unwanted legal risks. So that's gone. And then another one we had was Julian Assange came home. So there's the point of high drama, and I don't know when that was. When that was that, like middle of the year, something like that. And Julian Assange came on the flight back, sort of negotiated it as an early release, and we haven't heard from him too much just yet. But you'd expect that once they're campaigning for a pardon at the moment. I think that's the main push from his team, and then if they can get the pardon, then I'm sure he'll come out again.
Yeah. Good to have him back. And Julian Assange also, like WikiLeaks, were one of the early Bitcoin adopters. So something else like that happened recently was just in December. So El Salvador, it was a new story. Okay, so El Salvador to scale back its Bitcoin policies for 1.4 billion IMF loan deal. So basically, El Salvador obviously made Bitcoin legal tender and adopted Bitcoin, but it kind of walked back some of these commitments in a deal with IMF in order to get that kind of $1.4 billion loan. And I don't think it's bad, but because like really the main changes that they've done from what I understand is like Bitcoin is no longer compulsory to accept.
Which is a law they weren't enforcing anyway. So
Exactly, yeah. So it's kind of, and it's like, I think like, and it's still, I believe Bitcoin is still legal tender. So it's still legal tender as I understand, but it's just, you don't have to accept it, which is, again, like we always kind of feel like we were cheering for Bitcoin, but like a lot of us having kind of these kind of libertarian kind of leaning ideas, like the idea that you have to accept Bitcoin seems a bit, it always didn't sit right with us anyway, with me at least. So it's not a big kind of like, they don't really give up anything substantial. Basically, like businesses don't have to accept Bitcoin and limit some kind of public sector Bitcoin activities. And the El Salvador government, they created their own wallet, Chivo wallet, and they will no longer be involved with that, which again, like probably isn't a big loss because from everything what I hear, that Chivo wallet was very buggy and like it wasn't very good. So it's like, it's a lot of these things.
There's better wallets that people can use, so it's not a huge
like
loss.
It's still legal tender and we're still like buying Bitcoin. So we're continuing to buy Bitcoin. So that's like the most important things are staying, but just some like they kind of gave up the things that weren't that important, in my opinion.
Yeah, so probably a pretty significant net win. Yeah. I got some more Australian news. Just I guess milestones. Well, I guess the first one was with the ETFs. We had obviously a couple of ETFs launched in Australia, and I just note that we had one of the leaders on at least on one front, which is Monochrome, because they were the first to allow in-kind deposits and withdrawals, which means, and that's something that I believe like the BlackRock ETF and a lot of the other ETFs are going to be pushing for in the next probably early part of this year now in 2025, because it's such a significant advantage to be able to do that, because people can buy the ETF and then withdraw the underlying Bitcoin without incurring like a capital gains or loss event. They just get the equivalent Bitcoin that they bought that was owned by the ETF, and they're able to withdraw directly from the ETF.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. But is there like what's the actual status of that Monochrome ETF? So that's supposed to be like an Australian ETF.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So is it actually active now, like in Australia? Like
it's been active all last year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're on the CBOE, which is so not the ASX. It's like one of the other exchanges in Australia. The CBOE, like Chicago Board of Exchange or something like that. It's like, I guess.
Okay, so it's not on the ASX.
No, it's not on the ASX. No.
So it's another like smaller like stock exchange in Australia.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I think they were initially planning to go on the ASX, and then there was just the ASX was just delaying and delaying. Okay. I know Jeff has spoken previously that he was, not impressed with the way that the ASX operated around it. But yeah.
Okay.
I got one more Australian news bit, which is so Iris Energy, who are one of the Australian based public mining companies. They hit 31 exahash, so they're now the third biggest public mining company, and they're headquartered here in Sydney, which is pretty cool.
Third
So
biggest public mining company in Australia,
in the world.
in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, like Bitcoin mining, obviously only, not. Like
Yeah. Bitcoin mining. Yeah.
biggest Bitcoin mining. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
really?
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, they're second only to CleanSpark and Mara.
Okay.
Obviously, most of the operations, or all their operations, are in the US and Canada.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
that was cool.
Cool. Okay, so I'll go back to what I was saying before. So with regulation, so basically starting January 1st, 2025, the EU's FATFA travel rule will come into force, which basically requires virtual asset providers, so that's self-custodial wallets, like wallets and exchanges, to implement the travel rule. So for those who don't know, the travel rule, it's basically when people send, when you want to send Bitcoin from an exchange, as an example, to some other wallet, the exchange will have to ask you to provide where you're sending the Bitcoin, and you have to provide some, you might have to provide some information, documentation where you're sending it. So that's kind of in force, as I understand, in Europe right now. Strike, the Lightning wallet and kind of exchange, has adapted to that rule and implemented the travel rule for its European customers. So that's, kind of not a good thing, obviously. For European Bitcoiners, it's a big privacy loss and that kind of lack of freedom, and makes it much more cumbersome to use when you're trying to send it. From exchange. So, if you own, if you're trying to send it to a self-custodial wallet, you might have to provide data that you own it, but it's your own custodial wallet. And something like that is probably going to come to Australia also, soon, unfortunately, probably within the next year or 2 years.
Yeah. We'll just see how that crypto regulation or the Bitcoin regulation develops.
Yeah, and you have anything else?
Let me scan the list. We had a bunch of events. We had a bunch of Australian events. We had Bitcoin Alive, which is coming up again in a couple of months. So that was great last year, and it's going to be good again. HardBlock's the main stage sponsor, one of the headline sponsors. So yeah, that'll be awesome. There was Cheat Code Conference as well, which was really good. That was in the back end of the year. Multiple bush bashes. There was Beechworth down in Victoria. Then there was Cairns up in Queensland, Busselton over in WA, Parks in New South Wales. They're all excellent. Actually made it to all of them this year, so it was a good year for me for events. And then obviously every sort of regional centre and large city seemed to have a Bitcoin meetup starting to spring up if they don't already have one. So a very active local meetup scene. So yeah, a great year for local events. I'd almost say it's becoming the event scene is becoming congested. Like this, there's a lot of events going on. Yeah. But obviously, you don't expect to get to all of them. But,
It's good to have every year different type of events, so people can choose what they want, bigger type conference type event like Bitcoin Alive, or smaller, more casual events in the local city, or the bush bashes. So they all have different atmospheres and different vibes. So there's something for everyone. Yeah, and we'll be sponsoring Bitcoin Alive, and that'd be a great Bitcoin event, the biggest Bitcoin event in Australia, and that'd be early March.
Yeah,
so
March 8th. March
8th. So go to Bitcoin Alive and buy tickets, and the tickets are reasonably cheap. So highly recommend that.
You got some technical news if you want to cover what's happened. I think the biggest technical news of the year, in my opinion, was silent payments and Bolt 12s really started to, silent payments as a spec started to get finalized. I don't know if I'd say it's really been rolled out so far, but silent payments allows for reusable payment codes, which is, I think we've discussed in a prior episode. But pretty significant advantage or innovation in how Bitcoin addresses are done. And it's a way to issue new addresses from a single code without leaking privacy. So a pretty significant improvement. And then similar for Bolt 12. Bolt 12 is reusable payment codes on Lightning. And we did actually start to see that they got finalized, and it's also started to be rolled out, I would say. So I know that Phoenix Wallet supports it, so you can get contacts lists and reusable payment codes for your Phoenix Wallet, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah. So when you say finalized, you mean it was implemented in Bitcoin Core? Like activated in Bitcoin Core?
No. I mean, finalized is in the BIP. The BIP was finalized.
Okay.
So the BIPs have different statuses depending where they're at, and I believe the BIP was finalized. So that means that it's kind of it's going to be like a steady state, and they're not expecting to make major changes, which means that now wallets can start to implement it.
Okay. And the silent payments is also that kind of, is that a Bitcoin Core thing, like a soft fork, or did that? No, it's not a soft fork.
No, it doesn't require a soft
it's just
fork.
like like individual wallets, something individual wallets implement.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. And
so we'll probably see it in the Bitcoin Core wallet at some point, and then same for all other wallets, because it's just such a no-brainer. Like it's almost a no loss improvement. Like the only real cost is the implementation, I would say, like actually writing the code to support it. The actual like cost involved in running silent payments is very minimal, and the advantages you get are quite a lot.
Right. And and so the silent payments, so can you maybe just like summarize again? I know you talked about it, but what do we do again? Just like a quick reminder.
Well, silent payments, I guess the way to think about it is with Bitcoin addresses at the moment, if you want to give someone a Bitcoin address they can pay you, then if you give them a Bitcoin address, if they want to pay you again, then they can either ask you for a new address, in which case you have to manually go and get it, or you can run a Bitcoin Pay server where someone can, or like some kind of server where whoever wants to pay you can prompt the server, and the server will give them a new address. So that's one way to do it. And then the other way to do it is to reuse an address, right? And so there's a downside to both of those approaches. The first one is that it requires some kind of interactivity. You're either going to have to ask the person to manually do it, or you're going to have to ask a server. Either way, you're going to have to interact with something. So you basically have to go online to do it. And then the downside of reusing addresses is that you leak privacy. So if you're reusing the same address, you're leaking privacy. So it means that you like hit this fork in the road. It's like, okay, do I want interactivity, or do I want to sacrifice privacy? And silent payments allows you to basically get the best of both worlds. So you just get silent payments gives you a single address, and from that you can derive multiple addresses that no one else except you can derive.
Okay.
Right.
So basically, like if you want to accept Bitcoin, whatever, on your website or something, you can put that silent payment address, and people will send it to that address, but they're actually not sending to that address. It goes to like a kind of private address that belongs to you.
I think I think maybe better than think about it as a silent payments address. Think about it as a silent payments code, and then people use that silent payments code to get an address. And then they send the money to the address.
Okay, and right. So it means, and each time it generates kind of like a new address. So
that's right. Every time it creates a new address, and the most important thing is that only if you're looking at someone, say you give me a silent payments code, I can only generate addresses that I know from that silent payments code. If someone else sees that silent payments code, they would generate different addresses. And that's because the way that silent payments works under the hood is that you use your keys as well as the other person's key, which is in the silent payments code, and you put them together. And so that means you're always using something that's personal to you when you generate a code, an address from a code. Yeah.
So one kind of practical, why it could work is like, again, going to that example, if I'm putting that code, the Bitcoin silent payment code on my website to accept Bitcoin, and anybody can send it to me, and nobody else can look up like how much actually I received, because each time somebody sends, they get like a private kind of address.
Yeah, that's right.
Generated.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like nobody would see how much Bitcoin I received. in
Yeah, yeah.
donations, for example.
Yeah. Well, the Bitcoin transactions would still be on the blockchain, so people would be able to still see
But they
it,
can't
but
tie them
they
to
wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't know that it was
Yeah.
related to that Silent payment code. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Mm.
Yeah. So for us who don't know, like, because I guess people sometimes say this, oh, is there any changes in Bitcoin, and like, like, is it improving? And yes, there's always people doing stuff and developing and improving stuff, and it's not static, and people are working on it, and there's always like new developments.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, another change on the technical front was that last year Bitcoin Core started going pretty. Um, Bitcoin Core basically started being very proactive in disclosing security vulnerabilities. So previously, they sort of they would make updates to the software, but then they wouldn't necessarily broadcast that there had been security vulnerabilities which had been fixed. Whereas there was sort of a change of heart, and now they're very big. Since last year, they've been very proactive in basically revealing all the security vulnerabilities. And so, if you go to bitcoincore.org, then you can see a whole list of security vulnerabilities listed there, and they're getting constantly updated as they occur. And I think the main reason around that was that I believe the core developers were sort of under the impression that people were not updating because they weren't aware of these potential vulnerabilities. It was obviously in Bitcoin we prefer not to run the most recent update of software, because that does expose you as well if you're constantly just downloading and running whatever the next update that gets pushed is. However, at the same time, if you just refuse to update, then there may be vulnerabilities you're not aware of that you could be protected from by running the most recent update.
Yeah. Okay. Since like that's a nice segue for like another news item I have, and this isn't really directly Bitcoin related, but recently there's been kind of there was a revelation about like a vulnerability where 35. I'm not sure if you heard about this, but 35 Chrome extensions got compromised.
Oh no, I didn't hear about this.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, like stuff like that happens, but quite often. But I just found this one interesting. So again, this isn't like directly Bitcoin related. I'm not sure if anybody lost in Bitcoin because of this. But what happened is, basically, like so the Chrome extensions got compromised, and so the users of those Chrome extensions were kind of vulnerable. And the way it happened is the actual developers of those Chrome extensions, they had like a phishing attack on them, where people kind of the hackers like sent them emails to look at like they're from Google, but actually they were from the hackers, and the developers logged in thinking they need to update some kind of policy on Google, and they logged in and gave their credentials, like they gave permission for a malicious like software to have kind of change to have access to those extensions, and the malicious software then had access to the extensions, and then like the actual users of those extensions were now vulnerable. And mostly it seems the hackers were just trying to get into people's Facebook accounts and hack, like when people with those extensions, when they logged into Facebook, the extensions were kind of stealing their credentials for Facebook, and then kind of using that to do spam and like other kind of like post on their behalf and stuff like that for like different scams and things like that. So that's kind of what more or less happened. And again, it's not directly Bitcoin related, but I think it just kind of shows you like the reason I bring it up is like for people at home to kind of, these things happen, and there's some kind of vulnerabilities, and it could be somebody like, you're just using your Chrome or Firefox browser and you're not doing anything wrong. You're just logging into exchanges or whatever, and like the Chrome extension could have been compromised. And and could put your Bitcoin kind of at risk, which is like, I guess the point of is the moral of the story is like with Bitcoin. That's why we recommend hot wallet, like cold wallet. Sorry, right? And you know, if you have a cold wallet disconnected from your computer, it's much more secure. and anything online, like there's always that risk. And even like, and that's why also like sometimes like people go, or they might use some kind of well-known exchange, okay, like HardBlock, okay, but we're not a well-known exchange, obviously, but like we've got like we haven't lost customers' funds, and there's other exchanges, they might be doing stuff correctly, but if you keep okay, because I guess what I'm getting at is often people like who are new to Bitcoin, they think, oh, I'll put it on some big exchange, Coinbase, and they know what they're doing. They can handle security. And like they have this kind of conception, oh, Coinbase knows how security, they know how to do security better than me. So I'll leave my Bitcoin on Coinbase, which might be true. But then like you have some dodgy extension, and somehow when you log into Coinbase, they manage to like get your credentials, and then they can take money out of your Coinbase account, and it's all because like with some dodgy extension. Uh, yeah, so again, I'm just trying to explain to people how these things work and why like holding large amounts of Bitcoin on any hot wallet on any exchange is not really a recommended practice, and like having cold wallets, something like a hardware wallet is best practice.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And do you have anything else?
Yeah, I got a tiny bit more technical news from last year. I think something else that was exciting to see. Oh, and speaking of, this is actually a good segue because speaking of that, we do have a little collaborative custody vault product.
That's right.
Sort of in the works. We won't speak about it too much, but the reason it ties in is something that I thought was like a bit of a trend from last year was Miniscript support. So Miniscript is what's an easy way to explain Miniscript? Miniscript, if you don't know what it is Bitcoin. The way that Bitcoin is secured is via scripts. So you have locking scripts and then unlocking scripts, and you can really just think of that. Your locking script is essentially your padlock. It includes often your public key, and it's the lock that locks up your funds, and then your signature unlocks it. Now, Bitcoin allows for slightly more complex scripts than just like a signature and against a public key. And things you can do include things like time locking. You can have multiple different pathways, so you might be able to spend with a 1 of 1, or you might also be able to spend the same funds with, say, like a 2 out of 3. And you could hold those keys in different locations. Maybe one of those pathways is time locked. Anyway, Miniscript is something that makes that much easier to do and to reason about. And the reason is that the original Bitcoin script it's done at a very low level, and it's quite tricky and difficult to code and reason about. And so Miniscript was developed as kind of like a higher language, which then compiles into Bitcoin script. And so Miniscript is, you can basically it's almost human readable. I can read it, and you can see and reason very, very obviously about what's going to happen with those funds. And then the Miniscript compiles into Bitcoin script, and then that's what actually goes in the blockchain. So what was really cool is to see just Miniscript support starting to roll out. There's things like Liana Wallet, which is something that we're playing around with at the moment. That started to really gain quite a lot of traction. I know that there's the Bitcoin Way, which is it's one current collaborative custody option that's become available. They've just launched support for Miniscript, which is awesome to see. So you can do collaborative custody with like time locked recovery paths. And then the other one, which is big, which has been using Miniscript and just launched like just a couple of weeks ago, is Anchorwatch. Anchorwatch with their Trident Vault, which is also a Miniscript enabled wallet. And the reason they've gone with Miniscript is that it allows them to offer insurance. So they've got insurance, which is sort of they're a cover holder of Lloyd's of London, which is one of the oldest insurance firms in the world. And so with them, because you're now able to hold Bitcoin with keys that are time locked, and then after a certain period of time become available to spend, it means that they're comfortable insuring that Bitcoin for the period of the time lock. I believe that's how it works anyway. So it's pretty cool.
So Anchorwatch is actually, Anchorwatch does insurance, right?
Well, Anchorwatch is the Bitcoin company, and then Lloyd's of London is the insurer. They're the insurer, And then so Anchorwatch handles the technical component. They built
For
Trident
Lloyds
Vault.
of Leiden.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess the way to think about it is Anchorwatch is kind of like a collaborative custodian. And then if you use their specific setup, then Lloyds of London will insure you. So they're a cover holder of Lloyds of London, which means that they basically they operate on behalf of Lloyds of London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I will look that up later. Okay. So, okay. So like so they're holding Bitcoin on behalf of Lloyds.
No. On behalf of users. So
Lloyds of London.
No. So users use Trident Vault from Anchorwatch, and then if they comply, if they follow Anchorwatch's instructions and set it up in the way that Anchorwatch has set it up, then they're able to buy insurance on that Bitcoin.
Oh, okay. So especially Anchorwatch
from Lloyds of London,
custodial kind of service, like a vault type thing.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's like a vault. It's basically a vault.
If you use the kind of Bitcoin vault, you're able to get insurance.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, on your Bitcoin. Okay, cool. That's interesting. Yeah. So we're actually doing something kind of similar. Actually, we're working on it at HardBlock, and it's an exciting product using Miniscript. And I wasn't trying to advertise it earlier, talking about the vulnerabilities, but the security vulnerability. But yeah, we're working on
something. Just segued in.
To help our customers, and I think it's going to be an exciting product. I've got one more last thing, just really quickly. I just saw it on Twitter today. So Nick Szabo is like a Bitcoin OG, the person who came up with like the concept of smart contracts and like early version of Bitcoin, and he joined Samson's MAU project, like I think it's called Gen3.com, which basically the aim is to like help nation states adopt Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin strategic reserves like for nations. So obviously it's a big goal, very ambitious project, and we just announced that Nick Szabo is joining that project. I'm not sure in what capacity. I'm curious what he'll be doing there, but he's joining in some capacity.
Yeah, that is quite interesting. Yeah, because I haven't really seen him be that active in the last couple of years, so it's quite interesting.
Well, he was. No, I was just saying, I think he used to be very active on Twitter, but like I think he just gave it up like for 2 years. So I'm not sure. I guess he was probably still doing something, just not very publicly visible.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, that'd be exciting to see what that happens. I know that Gen3, they seem to fly around the world all the time, having meetings with government officials in different countries, and they do seem to be quite active. So. Hopefully some fruit comes from that for sure. Yeah,
cool. Anyway, I think like that's all I have for today. Like, should we finish up, Alex, or do you have any last?
I think that's a good recap of the year. Yeah, the major stories at least. Cool.
Yeah. So I hope everybody at home enjoyed that, and you'll hear from us next time. I will probably do the next one end of January, and catch you later, Alex, and see you later, everyone at home.
Okay, catch up.
Australian Bitcoin Podcast, presented by HardBlock, Australia's first Bitcoin-only exchange.